I had to explain this morning.
I see. Because she woke me up earlier than I wanted to, just to talk about the gifts. So kindergarten has already, started.
Yeah. So it's 7:30
7:30
to 4.
Oh.
And my wife takes care of that. She drives her to kindergarten normally.
It's not so far.
No. It's on the way to my office actually, so I could do it too. But I lose 15 minutes, so we have to deal with that. As long as she's not working, she's willing to do that.
Yeah.
With children, it's very complicated to organize
I know.
an everyday life. It's mostly a logistical question.
It's just surfing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
How to solve such a very complicated situation.
Yeah. It's like
children.
yes.
Sometimes I miscalculated.
Yeah, and then you're in bad trouble. Bad trouble. Don't miscalculate. And I will be on a conference trip from tomorrow, Vienna, Zurich, Bonn, Torino. So I make a short stop over here for a talk in Bonn. So I fly from Zurich back to Bonn for a talk and then to Torino.
Yes, today I will be flying back to Tokyo.
Yeah. So you do Cologne, Munich, Tokyo, or?
Yes,
Yeah.
Tokyo. And then the day, so the day after tomorrow, I will be in Guangzhou.
Ah, wow!
China.
Yeah, so you make a short stop over in Tokyo, pack some luggage, and
Yes.
over to Guangzhou.
Attending 6 meetings.
Yeah, wow. Okay, so that's tough.
So, if a airplane, suddenly stops, my schedule is over.
Yeah.
But that will be fine to me.
So you will be very relaxing. You have a good excuse to stay at home.
Yes.
But unfortunately, it will probably all work out nice.
Yeah.
So you fly Lufthansa?
Yes.
That's good. Yeah.
Yes.
They are reliable and good quality.
Yeah. But sometimes Lufthansa has a strike.
I know.
Right.
Oh yeah, they love strike.
Oh, yeah, strike. Yes, it's later workers.
Yeah.
But please do not fall. International flights.
Exactly, right? I mean, you can't, people are going to Tokyo. Well, yeah, no, this happened to me once in New York, and then I had to go with terrible something, United.
Oh, the worst.
Yeah, I know. It's incredible how low quality American airlines are, right?
It's flying the garbage box.
Yes, it's just a terrible garbage box, yeah. With all these, old flight attendants, old sad, depressed flight attendants, right? The whole thing is incredibly sad.
Right. Yeah. It is the worst airline.
United is bad. All the American airlines are basically in bad shape.
Yeah. So I have no reliance on American airlines.
No. Avoid them as much as possible.
Yeah. Lufthansa, Air France.
Yeah, they're very good. Yeah. Pretty stable, very good airplanes,
Yes.
good service.
Yes. seldom use the British Airlines.
Yeah, also not great. No.
Yeah, Japanese Airlines are good.
Yeah, they're of course good. Yeah. Is there a direct flight, Anna, from Frankfurt, Tokyo?
Yes.
Okay.
Also, Düsseldorf.
Yes,
Weekdays.
Düsseldorf as well. Yeah, this time I couldn't make this direct flight to Düsseldorf. Yeah.
Yes, they do have Düsseldorf, right?
Yeah. My elder son used that flight. I think he was a student at Cairo University. Yeah, that's good. Yeah. Frankfurt, Munich, Düsseldorf.
And that should be it.
Yeah.
I don't think Berlin is, the airport is terrible.
I heard that Tegel is now expanding its capacity for the international flights.
Yes, they are. Because they
is
will,
correct.
Yes, because they will never finish the airport. They are trying to build a serious airport. But something is deeply wrong in Berlin with infrastructure.
It takes time.
Yeah. Well, not in China. In China, they just built one in a month. But many people die probably as they build it.
China.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, okay. So, should we begin?
Yes.
Yeah. Sure.
Let me turn this off. Good.
All right. It's working.
Yeah. Maybe we would like to have a fresh air, but
I can close this. Okay.
Thank you.
We need to talk about this document. I can just print it for you if you like. I said I only have the PDF.
Maybe we have to submit the original one to the tax authority local office.
Yeah.
So.
But don't they have it? I don't know how this works because I send it to PHP and they send it to the tax. No, you have to submit it too. You have to hand it in.
Yeah.
But that means I need to get another one.
Yes. Because I'm gonna check it, but my understanding is we have to submit the original one. So.
Yeah. Which would mean that I have to apply for another one, which takes quite a bit of time. Yeah. Okay, good. Yeah, then I have to go to my secretary at some point today. Okay.
Yeah. We are living in a republic of paperwork.
I know. I've noticed. It's Japan is very extreme.
Yeah. So, sometimes I cannot understand the meaning of such paperwork, right? But paperwork is just snow.
Yeah.
It's always falling down, right? So every day we need to, kick out of this snow from our field.
And it would be very easy to do particularly that online, right? I mean, so why do they need this? Okay, anyhow.
Yeah. That's really ridiculous.
Japan is crazy with the paperwork.
It's kind of a religion.
Yeah, yes it is.
Right? It's a religious belief in papers.
Yeah.
Right?
In Japan, the God is coming, paper is coming.
Yes!
Exactly.
Yes, that's true. Yeah.
Well,
Okay, so
So let's start with the problem of the evil,
Yeah.
right? So in German tradition of philosophy, for example, Kant proposed the notion of the radical böse, right? The radical evil. So, but in 20th century experience, we faced another type of the evil, especially represented in totalitarianism. Someone, described it as the extreme evil, right? So, in this 21st century, how can we think of this problem of the evil from philosophical perspective?
Yeah. So Kant specifically, when he talks about radical evil, does not mean, as it were, terrible evil. He just thinks there's a paradox. And the Kantian paradox is the following, and we need to find a solution for this. So Kant believes that you cannot do something both freely and do something evil, right? That's the good old Platonic Socratic idea that no one sins willfully, as Socrates says. Now, in Plato's Kant's version, there's an interesting argument which leads to this conclusion. Because Kant thinks that if I do something freely, right, then what I do is I subject myself to a maxim which I don't, whose execution I do not desire. So or not necessarily desire. So if I do something morally good, right, I can do it despite the fact that I would like to do something else. So imagine, I want to hide some taxes from Japanese tax authorities, right? And I could try to do this, but then I decide for moral reasons, I think that, or in Germany, I think that, no, I should pay my taxes, right? Don't hide anything. It's good for poor people and the infrastructure. It's my duty, etc. So I do it even though I do not desire it, right? And Kant thinks that pure good, real good, is, if you do something entirely regardless of whether you desire it or not. Okay, so it's not against your will or against your desire, nor is it desirable. You do it, as it were, in cold blood. So it doesn't matter how you feel about it. You do it because of it, right? That's the categorical imperative. And Kant says when you do that, then you're free because you have determined yourself purely. If you're radically evil, so that's radical freedom, call that full freedom or complete freedom. Radical evil is the idea that you do something purely out of, what you would call a pathological desire. So purely out of desire. But if you do something purely out of desire, right? So, a rapist or a murderer, to take obvious examples, or someone organizing the Holocaust, right? Because he hates the Jews, If someone does something out of pure desire, according to Kant, he is not free. Because the motivation for what he's doing is a kind of necessitation. He's forced to do something and therefore not free. Now, Kant thinks that this is the underlying structure of human agency. So if you are a human agent, so capable of doing the good, okay, You always do something evil at the same time, because some of the things that you do are things you do because you purely desire them. That's why the theorem in the religion essay by Kant states, to be precisely, that no one does anything good ever who is not at the same time evil. That's the view. Okay? The view is much more interesting than people often think. So technically, Kant is not talking about what we would call radical evil. He's talking about evil at the root of human nature.
Yes.
Radical is just...
Especially desire.
Yes,
right?
Yes. Kant just thinks that we often do things out of desire. And that fact itself, that some of the things we do are done out of desire and some things we do are pure moral, that is radical evil. So human morality is part of radical evil. That's the paradox. So Kant discovered that it's a condition of possibility of human freedom that we are evil. Schelling takes this over from Kant, just that idea. Schelling thinks that just being someone, being an individual, right, having my mental biography, just having a mental biography means being evil. Being someone and being evil, according to Schelling, are the same. That's why late Schelling criticizes Kant and his earlier self in the philosophy of mythology, in a famous series of lectures about that topic, which influenced Kierkegaard heavily. He criticizes himself because he says that Kant and Kant's moral philosophy is a call to suicide. Because Kant says you have to give up your individuality. So the perfect moral being is not human. For Kant, it's God or Jesus, right? What he calls the holy will. So according to Kant, right, you cannot be entirely good. You will always struggle. And Hegel and Schelling famously criticize that because Hegel says, okay, so according to Kant, good and evil are the same. They have the same root, and the root of the good is the evil. So good and evil coincide, implode into evil. We're doomed. Yeah, that's the picture. And it's a paradox. And this paradox has been there throughout the entire, it basically was introduced by Luther, to be precise, in his text Freedom of a Christian Man. This way he introduces it. And you will also find it in Sartre when he says, "Nous sommes condamnés à être libres," so we are, doomed, forced to be free. That is the same paradox. So, but that paradoxically, right? That paradox doesn't say anything about totalitarian evil. They don't. So, even though it sounds like Kant or Schelling are talking, or Schopenhauer, about the kind of bureaucratic evil that we saw in the 20th century, they are not. So I think we need, they couldn't even, it would have been unthinkable for them. Also, Kant would probably not even realize, that genocide, which is not a thought for him, is evil. These people were all, defenders of imperialism. Kant very clearly argues for slavery, for instance. He thinks that slaves, he has racist beliefs about black people, literally that they have phlogiston in their skin. He writes about that. So and therefore are lazy. Kant thinks that black people are lazy. It's harder for them to move because they have this terrible, stuff under their skin which makes them look black. So they can't even be, moral according to Kant. So the best you can do for them is make them work for white people, because then at least they're in a context where they can help. For Kant, it's not a problem to turn black people into slaves. to use them as means for an end. So that's not a problem for him. So I think in the 20th century, we made, huge kind of moral progress after witnessing the horrors of the 20th century. Because this was a public kind of, at the end, a public kind of horror. I think this kind of horror was not visible to people like Kant or Hegel or Thomas Hobbes, etc. Right? They couldn't see it, even if they saw killings. For them, killing was more natural. For us, killing is very rare. It happens very rarely. I mean, there's the death sentence in Japan, right? But there isn't even any death sentence in Germany, fortunately. So killing is not a regular thing, right? So if it happens in Germany, it does, right? And then people are deeply shocked. In the 19th century, no one was shocked about killings. People got killed all the time, So we worry about that. So that's new. So I think that we need a theory of radical evil in the sense of, complete violence. There's this form of violence that we witnessed in the 20th century was just unknown and invisible to people before. So we need a new theory there. My view is this. I think there's a hidden possibility in Schelling's view. So we can use Schelling to understand the concentration camp like evil. Because there's the possibility of moral evil. So moral evil, Schelling saw that, and he thought that this was Kant. So that's the dark side to the categorical imperative. So moral evil is a kind of ethical terrorism where you define a false universal and eradicate individuality. For instance, you take, Germanness, like the Nazis did, so they define a false universal, and then they destroy everything that doesn't fall into this category. And the Nazi bureaucrats could do that with the utter perfection of someone who believes that he's doing the right thing. So it's probably a very false conception of the Nazis, right? Or Japanese suicide bombers, etc., or generals, right? It's a false conception to think of them as pathological. We would like to think of them as crazy, but how can there be so many crazy people organizing a war, right? Very efficient. Two small countries, Germany and Japan, right? I mean, Japan took over China, right? And almost all of Asia. How can, an island take over the rest of it? They can't be crazy. They have to be incredibly well organized.
Yes.
So these were perfect bureaucrats. And this perfect bureaucracy is the modern form of evil. It's precisely not pathological.
No.
So this is what Kant doesn't see, right? That the kind of reason that he has in mind can become instrumental reason. That is the truth in Adorno and Horkheimer's diagnosis, right? They saw that.
So, by using Schelling, is there any, good expression of this, bureaucratic evil?
Yes, bureaucratic evil, I think, coming back to, I've said that several times in Japanese television, to that naturalism or scientism is the evil of our time. So here is the logical or the ontological form of evil. I think atomism is evil. Okay, atomism in the following sense, right? If you think that reality, including social reality, right, consists of point-like entities that enter into relations, right, but are independent of those relations, then you can think of a system of, laws governing the behavior of those entities, but the entities are they're law governed and independent of the law. And I think that structure is the form of bureaucratic evil. Let me give you another example of bureaucratic evil, an argument that you sometimes hear in Germany from Christian Democrats, actually. So here's that argument. No, humans wouldn't be moral if we didn't teach them Christian codes of ethical behavior. Right? So there you have the idea that human animals are born like babies and they are immoral. And they are just entities. Right? They would do certain things like lions or bears, right? But it wouldn't be ethical what they did. So you have to bring them under a contingently created, in this case, Christian universal, to shape them so that by entering those relations, right, they become something else. That is one way of thinking about education, right, where you impose the form of ethics onto an immoral agent, like an animal. Human babies are just better at becoming moral. Apes are not that good, right? And bees and insects. But human babies, at least you can, as it were, install the Christian or any other kind of software onto them. So I think that is the form of bureaucratic evil. Bureaucratic evil is the idea that you need to structure human behavior so that it corresponds to a contingently, locally created form of ethics. So cultural relativism is the same idea. Right? Cultural relativism and bureaucratic evil, I think, have the same root. Maybe they are the same process.
Yeah, that's a really fascinating, observation. Yeah, so for example, in Japan, especially in 20th century, the Japanese bureaucratic system try to organize in national morality discourse. Yeah, it's very local Japanese ethical normativity educated in schools, right? Yeah, that was a supporter of bureaucratic evil in pre-war Japanese society. So
yes, it always starts there.
Right. Well, like now, Japanese government gets started with the new type of moral education in schools. Yeah, it's kind of a repetition of a cultural or relativism.
Yeah.
Right? And we look at China. Yes, Chinese government is now, interested in moral education in schools, right? It's a very similar repetition of bureaucratic evil.
Yes, I think so. And I think the argument, so the interesting thing is, these new forms of cultural relativism, they use a terrible argument according to which the universal is a European invention.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So if that were true, which it isn't, right? But if that were true, the Chinese could say, look, this is a European import, why use it, right? So the very idea that there are Chinese values or Japanese values or Russian values, right, is a product of the fantasy that the universal is local, European.
Yeah. We must have a Chinese universality.
Yes, yeah.
Japanese universality.
Exactly.
German universality.
Yeah. Yes.
Right?
Absolutely. And that is bureaucratic evil. Because as soon as you turn this into an institutional reality, you will create bureaucratic systems which have this consequence. Let me give you a European example. Ursula von der Leyen, the German new president of the European Union, right? So she was the minister of defense, German minister of defense in the government. Now she's the head of the EU. I don't know if people have noticed this in Japan, how striking this is. Yeah, this was a crazy takeover. So she was the weakest, she was perceived as the weakest minister in Angela Merkel's government. She's from the Christian Democratic Union, and defense is always a tough job in Germany.
Yes.
It doesn't make you any friends. You have to be, economic affairs if you're successful, etc. But you usually don't move from defense to chancellor, right? So Ursula von der Leyen could not really become the chancellor post Merkel. So Merkel found created this huge plot, and she now is the president of the EU. She's Juncker's successor. So yeah, Germany is now running the show, and her first declaration was, and she brought in lots of people from Hungary, too many in Poland, as her ministers. They're called Kommissare in the EU, and so she declared the European way of life. And Juncker asked her, he's still in office, well, if she could please tell him what that is, the European way of life. But here's what the European way of life is. Putting more money into Frontex, the border protection system of the EU. So what she will do is, there will be more warships controlling the Mediterranean, and creating waves, right? And if they are like migrants, the Europeans are building their own wall system in the sea with crazy deals with Turkey, etc. Right? And that the claim that we should have a European way of life and closing the border, right, is literally the same thing. It's the European version of Make America Great Again. Yeah. But no one notices that, right? In particular in Europe, because we Europeans are largely blind to the violence that European institutions create elsewhere or at the border. Yeah. We are completely blinded to that, precisely because Europe has the self-image of being like this moral, universal, etc., right? Yeah. I think you get a very different conception of Europe if you walk from, some sub-Saharan African country to Libya and try to get to Berlin. As you do this, I think you'll have a very different experience of Europe. And these processes are hidden under a huge set of ideological constructions.
Sure. So that's why we need to elaborate the notion of universality once again, or the notion of universalizing,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, so in this point, I'd like to once again think of Habermas,
Yeah.
right? So in post-war German society, Adorno and Horkheimer criticized the, kind of a special notion of reason, such as instrumental reason, that led the European, society into a totalitarianism, right? So let's, criticize this, notion of reason. But afterwards, Habermas once again picked up the reason,
Yes.
right?
He was their enemy.
Yeah, right? Even even though they belong to the Frankfurt School.
Oh no,
No?
that's an interesting story.
Huh.
If you look at the details, Habermas wanted to do his habilitation in Frankfurt after his PhD in Bonn, but Adorno and Horkheimer did not accept him as a student because his supervisor was a Nazi philosopher
Yes.
from Bonn. So Habermas couldn't go to the Frankfurt School. He was officially rejected. Then Habermas got his habilitation in Marburg. His supervisor was a Marxist called Abendroth. And Gadamer supported him. So Gadamer had this big plan of destroying the Frankfurt School, in my view. And so here's what he did. Habermas got his habilitation in Marburg, and then his first job in Heidelberg. Habermas's first job was in Heidelberg. And then he moved from Heidelberg to Frankfurt, and as far as I know, Gadamer intervened with the minister in Hessen of the state where the University of Frankfurt is, in order to get Habermas in. And then he got his most conservative student in the 60s as a successor for Adorno, Rüdiger Buchner. He was one of my supervisors. This is where I know the story. So, and then, to see the final, to see how Gadamer won the fight against the Frankfurt School. There's a schism in Hegelian scholarship in Germany. There's the Hegel Society, which is left-leaning, and then there's the Hegel Association, which is center-right. And the Hegel Association was created by Gadamer. And it always had its headquarters in Heidelberg, as a bastion against critical theories a la Frankfurt. And the new president of the Hegel Association is Axel Honneth. So, they took over the critical theory Gadamer in little pieces. First, he sent Habermas to destroy them. Then he sent Rüdiger Buchner, and now Honneth is even the president of Gadamer's Hegel interpretation. So the Heidelberg School, I grew up with that, so I've seen this very actively, had a real attack plan against the critical Frankfurt School. So the Frankfurt School started Habermas. To call Habermas Frankfurt School is an insult. And he criticizes them. Did you read this thing? Do you know this? It's scary. I just reread this. In the Philosophical Discourse of Modernity, a famous book by Habermas, there's a criticism of Derrida and Adorno.
Yes, I
Yeah.
know that.
And they are both flagged as Jewish. If you read this, it's crazy. I just reread it. It's scary what he says. You know what? There's a chain of Derrida pointed this out to me once. I met him in Heidelberg in 2001, and he made me aware of the following. In this text, there's a long footnote. Derrida always loves footnotes for good reasons. So there's a long footnote at the transition, at the end of the Derrida chapter, to the excursus. There's an excursus about Adorno then and Nietzsche. And before the transition, there's this long footnote where he classifies Derrida as Jewish mysticism. Even though Derrida explicitly rejects this, he said that despite Derrida's official refusal, he is a Jewish mystic, and then he goes from Jewish mysticism to death letter. So he associates Derrida with death, and reason with Christianity and life. So Derrida said this is a symbolic Holocaust. That's what he said, this footnote. He called it in a conversation symbolic Holocaust. And then the next paragraph starts with the word Adorno. Let me show you this footnote. It's really scary. If you, it's not intentional, right? I'm not saying there's always been this discussion of Habermas and Nazism. You know, he wasn't the Hitler youth. I'm not saying Habermas was a Nazi, right? Well, young Habermas was. He was in the Hitler youth, right? But as a young boy. However, you know, the psychoanalysis will tell us someone who was in the Hitler youth as a young boy and had a Nazi supervisor for his dissertation, right, was, let me say, very close to a problematic climate, to say the least.
It's really shocking.
It's shocking. Okay? Oh. The evidence. So this is not well known. You could print this passage maybe in the book if this is something.
Yeah.
There's this passage. He even calls Derrida negative Fundamentalismus. So he assigns them einen Platz innerhalb der jüdischen Apologetik, a position within Jewish apologetics. And so you have to read this whole footnote. And then he just quotes, you have to read this. This is really incredible, you know. And then suddenly there's a Rabbi Mendel, you know, he starts talking about rabbis, and you know. So you have to read this whole footnote, you know, here, dead, toter Buchstabe. So he calls the Torah death letter, toter Buchstabe. And then right after this, you see, Exkurs zur Einebnung, so and then Adorno and Derrida. And then, you know what he calls them? Totalitarian. Totalisierende Selbstkritik der Vernunft. He calls them totalitarian. So it's exactly what Heidegger does in the Black Notebook. Heidegger says the Jews started it. The Jews created the concentration camps. They were the first racists. They said that they are God's people. They invented it. They invented technology. That's all in the Black Notebooks. They are responsible for the concentration camps. That's in the Black Notebooks. Here, Habermas says, Adorno's and Derrida's critique of Western reason are totalitarianism and the death letter. It's the Heidegger view. He is Heidegger.
When was it written?
This is, it's a shocking text, really. 1988, published
1988.
Oh, yeah.
Wait a second. There was a huge debate entitled Historical
83, that was before that, historical strike.
Historical Strike.
Yeah, yes, and then this. So 83 is the first edition, to be precise. 83.
I think it was impossible to
Yeah.
write this type of sentences
Yeah.
after historical strike.
Yes, and you see, no one in Germany. So Philipp Freitag in his dissertation has pointed this out to me again, and Derrida told me. And Richard Bernstein in New York. So yeah, it's earlier. No, it's later. It's remarkable. Historical Streit is 3 years later. It's 3 years after this. So this is Habermas, and then 3 years later, the Historical Streit starts.
If my memory is correct, in historical strike, people, severely criticize such a discourse, saying that Jewish people got started that terrible, totalitarianism, right?
Yeah.
It was severely criticized.
Yeah. And then suddenly, absolutely. And Habermas has the view that, he calls Derrida a totalizing self-critique of reason. Yeah. And I mean, just the association, the chain of associations, right? Derrida, Jewish mystic, Rabbi Mendel, death letter, toter Buchstabe. And so the Habermas, their sides with Christianity against Judaism in a footnote. Yeah.
It's really shocking to me. Because at least in Japanese context, Habermas is a kind of a promoter of a post-war German, de-totalitarianization process.
Yes. Well, yes, that's correct. That's what he stands for, right? But the problem is that this is strategy. Habermas draws this famous distinction between communicative and strategic reason.
Yeah.
And I think that distinction is strategic. If you want to see a very interesting example of Habermas's pernicious activity in denouncing people, there's this interesting Habermas Sloterdijk affair. So from the beginning of this century, where Sloterdijk gave this talk about anthropotechnology, what now would be called transhumanism, etc. And he gave this talk rules for Regeln für den Menschentag. So where he said we need a moral code for biotechnology. That's all he says. And then Habermas and his students denounced him, and they claimed that Sloterdijk said that we need to use biotechnology to perfect humans, therefore he is totalitarian. But all that he says in the text is we need a moral code for biotechnology. That's all he says. And then Habermas wrote this big letter, which is very interesting. Is critical theory dead? Where he argues that it is dead because Habermas just denounced him on the phone, and he asked him in the Zeit, in an official letter to Habermas, he asked him to respond with reason to his text instead of calling people everywhere. So he reports that people called him from Tel Aviv and Jerusalem because Habermas told them never to invite Sloterdijk again. So apparently Habermas is very active, and many of the students are denouncing a more critical theory such as that by Sloterdijk. So people put Sloterdijk, I think, just without good reasons. I might be wrong, right? But he's now portrayed as defending the right, which is probably not true. He always calls himself a conservative leftist. That's his own self-description. So there's always this worry. So with Habermas, I'm not suspecting him of being right-wing, but I'm suspecting him of being subject to a mode of perception which Derrida has pointed out is racist. That's what I'm saying. The mode of perception, if you think of Derrida's and Adorno's critique of reason as Jewish apologetics, right? And you associate them with that letter, then that is just the chain of signifiers that Derrida analyzes in De l'Esprit. Because he also goes for guys there, right? He goes exactly, the Jews don't have guys, Christians have guys, Logos is guys, reason is guys, don't criticize guys. I mean, this is literally the chain of signifiers from Heidegger's Rektoratsrede.
So, if this is really shocking news to me, but if that is the case, so in his latest days, Jacques Derrida tried to shake hands with Habermas.
Yes.
Right? To them.
Reconciliation.
Right?
As a response to this, Habermas at some point realized that this was at least a strategic mistake and invited Derrida for a reconciliation meeting in a legendary meeting, I wasn't there, in Frankfurt, I think in 2000 or something like that.
Maybe.
And then he gave the Adorno lecture. But this was a long struggle of 2 decades before he got invited.
Two of them, tried to elaborate the new Enlightenment theory at the time.
Yes, they tried that,
Right?
both of them. But I think both Derrida and Habermas failed.
I think so.
Because for one thing, they were both, in the good old sense, Eurocentric. We talked about that, right? Blind. They were just blinded by, Zizek pointed out to me once, I didn't check this, so this might be a myth, but it's at least not implausible. But so Zizek makes the claim that if someone read, from the future, or just us, Habermas's texts until 1989, until the reunification, there's no evidence of the existence of Eastern Germany in the text. He never talks about that. So that's remarkable. So you have, the philosopher of Western Germany, who doesn't even mention Eastern Germany. That's what Zizek claims. Now, I don't know if this is true, but it's remarkable to think of Habermas, like in light of just that question. Habermas's interventions in Asia, right? What role does this play? Of course, just none.
I read his essay entitled Deutsche Mark Nationalism. It was published before 1989. Probably.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of a declaration of German constitutional self-image
Yeah,
at that time,
yeah.
right? So I felt really, strange to that text. Habermas,
Yeah.
for Japanese leaders, is a representative of post-war German, consciousness.
Yeah.
Yeah, gave such a, strange text.
Yes, I think it's just misguided. I think Habermas is probably just much less emancipatory than we think of him. He was just very good at creating this image. So we associate him with something that might not be him.
So, yeah, my question is this, as a post-war German philosopher, yeah, there are many, philosophers, right, in post-war German society. I think they try to rethink of the meaning of Nazi totalitarianism in philosophical perspective, right? But as you told, if we cannot, have a Marxian way of thinking, so is there any other, possible way to have some responsible, observation to Nazi or totalitarianism in post-war German society?
Oh yes, I mean that is something that is a scary topic.
Yeah.
Because I just heard a lot on the radio because there have been I think alone this year 5 neo-Nazi murders in this state. And there was this big case where a politician was shot in Hessen. Hessen seems to have lots of neo-Nazis, the state where Frankfurt lies in, right? And someone was shot by a neo-Nazi. So there's a whole National Socialist Underground movement, so-called NSU, National Socialist Underground, in Germany and others, and they are pretty big. They're much bigger than I would like to think, right? No one knows exactly their specialist for that, right? I just heard an interview with a specialist for these underground movements. But there are, of course, serious neo-Nazis in Germany. It's not so clear how the Alternative for Germany, that new party, is positioned. I don't know, I'm not a specialist. It's a very difficult question how exactly they relate to the neo-Nazis. Are they just conservative? It's not so clear how far right they are. Apparently, there are different subsystems in the party. But there's, a significant amount of National Socialist underground in Germany. Maybe 9% of the population, something like that. But clearly more than 1%. Like a significant amount of the German population continue, modes of thought that are constitutive of National Socialism. Yeah. But what they forget, of course, these radically violent groups, what they of course forget is, they are rather the SR. So there was the SR, the SS, various organizations of the Nazis. And they are, as it were, just the brutal, the people beating people out, communists up on the streets, in the 1920s and 30s. Those are the neo-Nazis. That's this kind of type. So just brutal street violence doesn't lead to a totalitarian state. So it's bad that they exist, but it's not institutionally threatening as such. So the real institutional threat would be a totalitarian state, which comes into existence by completely different means, right? So this one has to look at the specific situation in Germany and Japan and China and Russia, etc., to identify how totalitarianism comes into being. I think that when totalitarianism rises and you're a witness, you do not necessarily notice. It looks all right. So had we been in Germany, like in a German village or a small town like Freiburg, you probably saw like loud people marching a lot. So this must have been loud and flags and parties, right? This was probably very loud and visible, but you did not see concentration camps, of course, right? I mean, they didn't. Yes, the neighbor was gone, and at some point you could have thought, but I think that relative to people's expectations, the whole process must have had an element of, quiet uncanniness. That's what I would expect. Until it's so loud with wars and bombs, etc., that you realize that something's wrong. Right? But I think the process was, quieter than we think of it.
I see.
And more hidden. And similarly now, I think that, if you were really to fight neo-Nazis in Germany, publicly or with the help of the police, etc., this is dangerous. It's not like an intellectual activity. You write a newspaper article, they knock at your door, right? I mean, they're there, they're real, and they're dangerous. And they kill people. This is, a whole different level. And I don't know where Habermas stands in all of this, right? How he related to this, etc. Recently, a wonderful text was published in Germany by Adorno, which is now a national best-selling book. Der neue Diskurs der Rechtsradikalen, I think is the title. The new discourse, it's from 68 or 69, a lecture he gave in Vienna. A very short lecture. Did you see this? You have to publish this, by the way. If you read this text, it reads like a description of today. It's very uncanny. 40 years ago, it's exactly that he talks about automation, artificial intelligence, what's now artificial intelligence, how this relates to the new right, etc., etc. So that's an interesting description, and so we might be witnessing, right, the rise of totalitarianism right now. But it's, as we talked about this yesterday, when it rises, it's quiet, and it comes from a different direction now. So the rise of totalitarianism goes, I think, by way of technology and science. That's its mythology. Nationalist totalitarianism in the 20th century, told stories about superiority, right? Japanese or German superiority. No one tells this story. That's an implausible story, not even the Americans. So you have to tell some other story. And I think right now, the story that people are telling is that of science and technology. So the science and technology mythology is the rise of totalitarianism.
Ah.
It's one process.
Yeah, including Japan, China, Germany, and other all of almost areas.
Yes, the whole industrialized world is is part of this process. And this process is anti-enlightenment.
Yes.
Because the enlightenment idea is that progress is primarily moral progress, and secondarily scientific technological progress. So the Condorcet, etc. idea is that, just the classical enlightenment vision is that in order to have moral progress, you need scientific technological progress, but as a support. It's not an independent development. And now we have the enlightenment idea without ethics. And that is not enlightenment, because enlightenment is fundamentally about ethics.
Yeah, sure.
That's why we think we need a new enlightenment.
Yes, yes, yes. So, do you find any, relationship between Adorno and Schelling?
Oh, they are very close. Adorno has this master notion in negative dialectics and elsewhere of the non-identical, right? Das Nicht-Identische. Yeah. And late Schelling has the term, which is exactly Adorno, das sich selbst Ungleiche, the unequal to itself. So that's the non-identical in Adorno. And so unprethinkable being in Schelling is the same theorem as negative dialectics. Schelling's positive philosophy and negative dialectics have the same root.
Good. Yeah, I finally, understand your way of reading of Schelling and Adorno. Yeah, it's really, continuous, intellectual, history in German society.
Absolutely. And I was not allowed talking about ideology in Germany. I was not allowed to write my dissertation in Heidelberg about Schelling and Adorno.
Why?
They prohibited that. Because they did not want me to write anything about Adorno. And in particular, not the point I just made was prohibited. They prohibited me writing that. So I wrote a perspective for, I had a special permission by the dean to get a PhD without MA. I don't have an MA. My first degree is PhD. And the dean, gave me a special permission to do that, which was still legal in 2005. Now it isn't anymore. It was a leftover from, the beginning of the 20th century. In the Weimar Republic, no one had an MA. That didn't exist. Their first degree, Heidegger, etc., all of these people as their first degree, a doctorate. They didn't have a master or a BA. So that still exists as a possibility. And then so the dean decided that I could do that. I handed in my prospectus about Schelling and Adorno, and I would have made that point. And then I had to walk with my supervisor in the garden of the university, and he told me that no way, this is very unclear, and Adorno has nothing to do with Schelling, and just don't. And if you want to do that, then I think you have to get an MA before. So basically, he said, if you want to do that, I will destroy your life. Yeah. So I wrote my dissertation just about Schelling.
Oh, it's shocking story too.
Yeah, no, if you look at the details in Germany, the construction of the classics, etc. If you look at how this is set up in reality, you get a very different conception of post-war Germany, and you don't feel this in Bonn. Because Bonn is the birthplace of just that modern democracy. So all this Western post-war Germany, the kinds of things that we think when we think about the good part of Habermas, right, the emancipatory part, that's very much Bonn, right? That's just that city. This is the DNA of the city. That's why the Constitution was written here, etc. Habermas is always into the German Constitution. A lot of this is probably personal history, which his biography having to do with this place. I don't know what happened to him with Erich Rothacker here in detail. Right? What did they talk about? How evil must Rothacker have been? Right? And Oskar Becker was also here. I don't know if you know Oskar Becker, one of Husserl's students. So Becker and Heidegger were the same generation, and Being and Time is published. So Being and Time was not published as a book. It was published as a long journal article, as it were, in Husserl's journal. And in the same issue, Oskar Becker published his book Mathematical Objects. So this is probably the best issue of all times of the Phenomenological Journal, Being and Time and Mathematical Objects in one issue, right? I think it was just one volume. I didn't see the volume, but they were published together. I don't know what exactly the frame was. I need to look this up, so I don't want to spread myth, but this was the publication. And Becker then came to Bonn. He was a professor here too. And Hans Sluger, who's a professor at Berkeley now, he's also from Bonn, he once told me, he's been in Berkeley for 70 years or something, but Hans told me that he studied with Becker after the war, and Becker told him, "You are gay, you cannot stay in Germany." And he sent him to Oxford. He said, "Yeah, they are gay. Go to Oxford." He helped him to get into Oxford, but he told them to leave Germany. We don't want gay people here. And so this was the department of philosophy in which Habermas got his degree, right? Yeah, it was a bad place at the time. But then at the same time, right, it's the birthplace of modern democracy in Germany. So it adjusted, right, a lot of those processes. And right now, Bonn feels to me, at least to me, I might be in a privileged position, but it feels to me, that, at least my university, that it doesn't have these defects. But I've seen this in other places in Germany. The more you go south in Germany, in particular Baden-Württemberg, is deeply infested by, conservative, Christian modes of thinking.
Yeah.
So all the worries about Eurocentrism and Christianity that we talked about yesterday, if you go to those states in Germany, that is reality down there. It's not real here, but it's real down there.
Bonn is surrounded by the philosophical Schwarzwald.
Yes, absolutely.
Right.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And then there are little holes, as it were. Let's call them real Lichtungen, right? So there are real clearances. There's basically a philosophical Schwarzwald, right? And then there are open spots: Berlin, Frankfurt, Leipzig, a bit, Bonn, right? There are these open spots. But there's a lot of real Schwarzwald in Germany. A lot. You know, otherwise, you know, the Christian Democrats run this country. You know, and they're always in the 30%. Currently, they're not like 41, okay, but they still have 32% of the population. And the Christian Democrats in Germany, that population is Schwarzwald.
So now, if you are asked to give some words to younger generation who are interested in philosophy, how can you tell to them?
Well, I mean, they should just really study the most contemporary stuff. So, I mean, it's up to us as professors to create institutions of teaching,
Yes.
right? Where, none of those idiotic, let's just call them idiotic, ideology is already a good word for this, but, basically idiotic assumptions, right? Like, Judeo-Christian value systems or whatever, right? And this is mostly idiotic. Or Islamophobic ideas about Islam, etc., right? None of this should be taught. So when we teach them, Schelling, Hegel, or Cookie, or Lao Tzu, or whatever we teach them, or Derrida, right? We have to teach it to them in the spirit of the 21st century.
Yes.
That's all we need to do. So this, the bad sides, we need to inform them about the dark sides, of Heidegger, etc. But in such a way that they see that this doesn't even make sense anymore, right? It's a completely nonsensical way of thinking. Let me give you an example. I mean, the rector of the University of Heidelberg, I think, is a creationist. He gave a talk, so they just got a big research center for physics called Structures. And they investigate the question how the universe can have the same mathematics at different scales, right? Now the scaling problem comes back. And they believe that the universe is more or less subject to the same laws on all scales. It isn't, but anyhow, they believe that. And then the rector gave this opening speech, to the academic year, in which he said, the fact that the universe has this structure is probably not a coincidence, but might be an expression of God's design. And then the physicists, some of the physicists involved in that, recently, as soon as they got the status of excellence university again, a couple of weeks after this, they published a climate denial declaration on their homepage, in which they said there is no man-made climate change, and we need atom energy. We need reactors. So this is just a frame of mind, right? That we would associate, as it were, before deconstruction. That is what we would have associated with, Judeo-Christian Occidental ontotheology, right? That is what we thought we had deconstructed. So what we have to do to the younger generation is we have to teach them a way of thinking which makes this mode, of classical ontotheology completely strange to them. So we have to inform them that this exists, right? But teach them that this is obviously nonsense, right? So we don't tell them that this is even a possibility. We have to demonstrate them, from the get-go, how false this way of thinking is. And that's part of enlightenment.
Yes. Yeah, I completely agree with you. In this new enlightenment project in university. So I think, for this purpose of new enlightenment, I think we need to elaborate the notion of institution.
Yes.
Or institutionalization. Two of us are, trying hard to organize a new type of institution in the midst of university system, right? But it's not, it's not. It's a really exceptional case in Germany as well as in Japan. Right? Many, professors have no power to do so.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
But we have to involve many professors into this project.
Yes.
Right? So in this respect, how can we think of institution or institutionalization in philosophical sense?
I mean, my hope is always, the way I think about this is as a starting point, right? People like Hegel or Marx did that too, right? I mean, Marx was so powerful that at least officially the Communist Party of China, right, still thinks of him as a hero.
Yes.
Yes. So it is possible by way of ideas, because Marx was not an activist. He published newspapers, but mostly he's a theorist. Marx is, as it were, one of us, but unemployed, Engels gave him money, he wasn't a professor. But anyhow, so it is, of course, possible by way of thinking and institutionalized thinking to profoundly change historical reality.
I think so.
Yeah. And so that is something we need to do now again, right? It's not automatic, apparently. So we need to create a global institution. Currently, I'm thinking of like a network of institutions, like the ones that we are running, and there are many others I've been noticing, and so were you, right? That worldwide centers and people are popping up, and they contact you, right? For instance, at the Technological University in Monterey, which is the richest, not the biggest, that's UNAM, but richest Mexican university. It's a fantastic, super modern university in Monterey. And so I met the dean of academic affairs in Buenos Aires. So I will go there, and they are doing that too. So out of the blue, you meet someone there, or the president of the University of Campinas, which is the second best in Brazil, right after Sao Paulo. Campinas is pretty good, Unicam. So he's also an Argentinian. So you meet these people in Latin America, and they have that vision. And then I talk to you, so I meet someone in Tokyo, same idea, right? You meet people in China, etc. So this is popping up, or Australia, right? And France, etc. So this is common. There's something, in the air which is global, and people see this new space, right, from different perspectives, and then they meet and they realize that they see the same thing. So it is a possible future, right? We look, I think philosophers always look into the future.
Yes.
Philosophy is seeing the future. We see the future. We know it's coming, but there are alternatives. So in an institution, creating an institution or institutional activity is a way of making this happen.
Yes.
So everything we do by creating institutions, I think, is that. My strategy, and you are also interestingly employing the same strategy, is get big companies.
Yes.
I think that's the new enlightenment too, right? Philosophers from the left, classical left, would never have wanted to work with companies, right?
No.
Because they thought of them as evil. But we need them. We need people with real power who are not ideological or who can be used for the goal of enlightenment. And quite often, these are people with a lot of money or economic power. But they never talk to philosophers, but they're open-minded about this in principle. So, given that they're enlightened people in the business world too, I think we need the business world. And this never happened. I think this is new, right?
Yes.
When did philosophy team up with the business world to make the world a better place? That never happened. And so that's something I'm trying to.
In this, perspective, maybe the notion of capitalism would be radically, transformed.
Yes, radically. Yes, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now I am running a, research unit called Capitalism for Humans.
That's good.
Yeah, that means, in the early capitalism, for example, Adam Smith, defined human beings as workers.
Yeah.
Right? And the workers can produce some commodities. Commodities are, distributed in a chain of commercial chain, right? And people consume them. Yeah, it's one imagination of a capitalism of things, right?
Yeah.
And then we are entering a new type of capitalism. So we talked about the difference, right? For the capitalism of difference, right? So, but next step would be introduced in capitalism. So once again, we are asked to redefine human beings, right? Capitalism for human beings. It's just, imagination for me. Yeah, but companies and the company people are trying to, sense this new perspective in their own way.
Yeah.
So I think the philosophers can collaborate with them to, elaborate capitalism.
Yes.
Once again,
Yes.
the human beings would be redefined in this process. That's my thinking.
Yes, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Yeah. I think that's a very good way, right? I think if we create these platforms, then we are influencing capitalism in just the right way.
Yes.
And many people are interested in that. Also, you can translate this, right, from the standpoint of capitalism. You can translate this into a new market. You can, ethics can be a useful product.
I think so.
Yeah. And why wouldn't it? Right? So imagine that your economic transactions are structured in such a way that you increase the conditions of production for other people. Not only fair trade, right? So the Peruvian peasant, gets more money for his coffee. No, imagine, the kind of, your economic structure is such that the Peruvian peasant, makes a lot more money because he has the kind of machines that he needs, right, in order to produce more. So, and to make the work better. So imagine all these peasants, instead of just picking, the coffee, in 14 hours a day in the sun, right, with no real social security, etc., etc. So imagine we created, with the help of digital products, etc., and global money flows, right, a system where coffee that you buy literally increases these people's life, right? So that would be a global system of meaningful transaction, and people could make money because So imagine you had the choice, very trivially, between buying, something for €5, right, and you're very well aware that maybe children are dying when you buy this product, or for €7. I'm not saying 700, a little more, right? And that little more contributes to the reduction of bureaucratic evil somewhere, right? And now you can imagine, right? If many people do this, right, then this other product will go out of the market.
Yeah.
This is perfectly imaginable.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
But and I think big companies will be interested in models like that.
Yeah.
So they should all employ, I think, big companies should employ philosophers. They shouldn't have just their ethics compliance team, right? Often they just have a compliance team, but those are lawyers. Yeah? They should have a team of, say, 5 very good philosophers with PhDs, right? Who actually do philosophy in like a room, a conference room, but related to the industry. So, say Nintendo, they have these 5 philosophers, right? And they, they have money, a research account from Nintendo, and they work with universities, sociologists, physicists, whatever they need, right? In order, for instance, to study the ontology of virtual reality, the stereotypes. Is it bad that, for instance, Mario is portrayed with Italian stereotypes, right? I mean, we might wonder, it's Mario and Luigi, right? Is this fun or not, right? So we should ask Italians. So do you think that this is bad stereotyping of Italian? This is just an example. Or what does it mean that, he kills all these turtles, right? So they could just study that, and then maybe they could invent, like ethical landscapes. So imagine you play a new Nintendo game, like a new world's best-selling Nintendo game, right? And when you play it, you become a better human being.
Yeah. So it's kind of a project to enhance the conditions or possibilities of our life.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So, compliance people do not pay attention to this, condition of possibilities.
No, they don't care.
Yeah, right? But philosophers who have a very radical, imagination for that, right? Yeah, the notion of condition possibility is really philosophical.
Yes,
right?
Absolutely. It could be more philosophical.
Right?
Yeah.
Actually, after March 11th, so I have been thinking of Fukushima's problem. Yeah, so radioactive stuff, right? So at that time, I thought, oh, radioactivity or reactors are a kind of threatening the condition of possibilities of human beings. That's why we have to, avoid them. Yeah, not for its economical, reasoning, not for its technological reasoning. No. It's unethical.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely. Yes, it's unethical. Absolutely.
Right.
It's clearly unethical. If you think about it, right, if you know enough about it, you'd say, sorry, but that's unethical. Because we create ways that will not go away for thousands of years. We cannot send it to the moon. If we could send it to the moon, okay, let's do that. But we can't, too dangerous. If one rocket explodes, we are all doomed, so we cannot do that. So radioactivity should be out. And, how on earth are we still using technology from the Manhattan Project? I mean, the Manhattan Project killed, hundreds of thousands of people in the worst attack on humans, single attack on humans ever. I think we don't realize that enough, right? Sure, there's the good old question, was it justified? And no one ever figured this out historically. Was the emperor short of signing a peace treaty anyhow, etc., right? And our historians debate this. I don't know what the answer is. I don't know if the Americans did it to just demonstrate their power, to check the technology as a revenge. I don't, really to stop the war once and for all. I don't know what the reason was, right? Probably the historians will never really figure this out. But whatever the reason was, this was the biggest single act of killing in the history of humanity. The biggest single attack of murder, of killing, let's call it killing, because murder or not depends on the interpretation of those historical facts. But that's what it was now. And the Manhattan Project, which, yes, did stop the Second World War, probably contributed significantly, and I'm very much against the Second World War. I'm glad that the Japanese Empire is destroyed, and I'm glad that the Nazis lost the war. I'm all for that, right? Well, thank you. I'm not questioning that at all. What I'm saying is that we still use that kind of technology.
Yeah.
And why would we need that technology? So and there you see the failure of physics to be morally productive. Physicists just don't get it. They just think that right now it would be much more efficient, to do that. Because they do not use their imagination and intelligence to create something else. So, for instance, I think we should force the physicist to do something useful. There's the famous story, right? Philosophers are useless, physics is useful. No. Physics is useless. It's not only useless, it's dangerous. It's not even useless. So we should really reverse the order. The physicists have finally to do something useful. Not another Large Hadron Collider, right, which costs billions, destroys Switzerland, right, underground. Think of the ecological catastrophe of the LHC. It's and we kind of know that this didn't lead anywhere. So maybe physicists, instead of getting Nobel Prizes for meaningless things, should that no one is interested in outside of their field, should imagine all the physicists had the goal of solving the energy problem. They will solve the energy problem in 2 weeks.
I think so. It's
It will take
easy.
2 weeks. Right? It must be very easy, right? There are different ways of producing energy I know that there's instead of fusing the nuclei, right? There are different things that can be done in principle, and otherwise they would solve it.
Yeah, right after 1945, in Japan there appeared a journal of science, right, in which they analyzed the reason of Japan's defeat was defeat of technology, right? So we needed a atomic bomb technology at that time, but we did not get it. So we lost that war. Such a discourse was still very popular at the time. Even today, I think such a discourse is widely spread in Japan, right?
I heard
So
that.
bureaucratic evil is not seriously asked in post-war Japanese society,
Yes.
right? Yeah, that's really serious problematic in Japan, I think.
Did you notice? Let me just check this related to this. That's why I'm picking up my phone. Let me just check one fact. So Habermas did run a research center in Munich together with Carl Friedrich von Weizsäcker. I don't know if you've heard of him. A physicist, philosopher, very famous. His brother became the president of Germany to Richard von Weizsäcker.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so Richard von Weizsäcker's brother is Carl Friedrich von Weizsäcker, a good friend of Heisenberg's, very famous physicist. And yes, he did. Okay. And from 1940 to 1942, he worked for Hitler to create the atom bomb with Heisenberg, which they didn't manage, the German Uran project. And this person was together with Habermas and Starnberg. They ran a research center about the human conditions of survival, etc. You see, that's so Carl Friedrich von Weizsäcker is like, questionable character, to put it mildly. And he's running, the guy who tried to get the atom bomb for Hitler runs a research center with Habermas in Munich after the war. The guy who calls Derrida a Jewish apologetic mystic. Think of just those facts. If you just put them together without interpreting them, you just look at that, you're like, oh my God, right? Whatever this means, this by itself is shocking. So this is where the atom bomb enters the picture. He then became a philosopher after the war von Weizsäcker in order, to defend denuclearization of Germany.
So in Japan there is a very similar anecdote, right? In post-war Japanese society, philosophers did some important role to, develop the actor system, right? So now I suddenly forget his exact name, but he was a disciple of Nishida Kitaro, Kyoto School.
Oh yeah, the Kyoto school is also deeply in cahoots. I mean, with with the empire.
Yeah.
I mean, their reading of Heidegger is not a coincidence. Like Kyoto, I think is like the Black Forest.
Yeah.
It's very clearly part of the problem.
Yeah. So one of Nishida's disciples, what officially changed his idea in post-war Japanese society.
Yeah.
Right? He turned to be a kind of Christian-like philosopher. Yeah. It is called tenko in Japanese, conversion of philosophical faith. Right? But anyway, so he was a really powerful scholar at that time, and he organized a committee for reactors in Japan, in Japan's Council of Scholars. Right? It was a starting point of post-war Japan's reactor system. Philosophers did a huge role for that, technology. Right? Yeah, I found this fact in agan University.
That is very interesting.
Right.
So I think if we look at just that combination of factors, it's obvious. It's incredibly obvious that we need a solution to both mobility and energy, global solution, and that solution can be found if universities and companies work together. We have a big sustainability project here in Bonn, with the United Nations, where people are really trying to do things like that. They work on, industrial robots, etc., for the agricultural industry in Africa. So what they are trying to do is help farmers in Africa with the help of drones and software that they are preparing here to increase production on their fields. So I think we need projects like that, and very quickly, and then we can solve many of the crises, right? The ecological crisis and stuff like that will go away. But philosophers have to be part of this.
Yes.
So, and as a matter of fact, we just also need more philosophers, with a high level of bullshit detector, right? I mean, I think you and I, we developed bullshit detectors in our career, right? So, when we talked about the Judeo-Christian elements that are present in Derrida, right? Or the Eurocentric, Paris-like fantasies, etc., right? That is a kind of bullshit detector. And Derrida didn't have that. Derrida had his own bullshit detector. He saw things, right? But, his constitutive mythology was itself not enlightened. That's why he always worried about deconstruction itself, right? The eternal worry about the nature of deconstruction. What is deconstruction, right? He wondered whether something's wrong with his own stance, but he couldn't see this. We can see this because we are very clearly post-Derridian.
Yes.
So for us, it's easier to see. We don't see our blind spot. It's a moving target, but that doesn't mean that we need to suspect ourselves, right? What it means is that we need to endorse the position of new enlightenment that we envision. We just need to endorse it. And then someone else can point out the blind spot. That's, I think, progress in philosophy.
Yeah. Nonetheless, actually, in Japanese context, Japanese philosophers have a very strange self-image. we are a kind of a useless, scholars.
Yeah.
Philosophy is a useless scholar. And the Ministry of Education also tries to convince philosophers, oh, you are a useless scholar, right?
Yeah.
So such type of discourse is really prevalent in Japanese society. Not only today, but it's long time tradition.
Yeah.
I hate it, right? It's just wrong.
Yeah, it's objectively wrong.
Yeah.
It's like saying, so imagine they would all tell the mathematicians that they're useless because all they do is think about numbers, right? Then you might say, oh no, if anything is useful, it's mathematics.
Yeah.
And philosophy is more useful than mathematics.
Right.
Because philosophy philosophy is the ground of all useful thought.
So such a discourse is a philosophically unmatured,
Yeah.
naive,
Absolutely.
discourse.
Yeah.
Yeah, but many philosophers have no, conscious, dejection to that
Yes.
discourse.
Yes.
That's really childish to me.
Absolutely, yeah.
Right?
I think one way of summing this up is that we just have too many bad philosophers.
Right.
Because this is a bad philosopher.
Yeah.
Right? And there are many, many bad philosophers. Now, the interesting question is, why are there so many bad philosophers? And I think this is a consequence of institutions. Because institutions in the past have favored, through their merit systems and incentives, they have favored bad philosophers. It's easier to have a career, if you're a bad philosopher.
Yeah.
Because you publish boring papers in journals that no one reads. You don't even publish too much. Teach your seminars. Get a good lifetime tenured contract somewhere and hide from reality in your room and read books. That's a cozy life. You can have a very cozy life, but you're not doing your job.
No.
Yeah. So these people are useless, but not because philosophy is useless, but rather because the ministries of education have decided that they prefer useless philosophers to critical thinkers.
Yeah.
That's why. So this kind of philosophy has been created by bureaucratic evil.
You are prohibited to write a dissertation on Adorno and Schelling. That story tells a lot to me. Yeah. In my graduate days, I was also prohibited to say something. Right? One of my professors prohibited me to say anything in his class.
Yeah.
Right?
Wow.
I was so much shocked. Oh, this is the University of Tokyo. Right? But why? Right? I raised a hand and asked him one single question. Right? He is a scholar of Chinese philosophy. Right? And his perspective of European philosophy was really naive, right? So that's why I asked him. I don't think European philosophy is so naive, right? It has its own very complicated history, and now, for example, Jacques Derrida tries to deconstruct such a image of European philosophy, right? So, if we can see European philosophy as a complicated system and including contradictions. Maybe we can see Chinese philosophy in the same vein, right? It's not a Oriental, imagination. No. It has its own history and it has its own complexity, right? I would like to, think of Chinese philosophy in this way. And then he got angry. Right? So I prohibit you to say anything in my class. It was a really, symbolic event in my life. And then I have been trying to, criticize him. In Japanese, sinology context, right? But it is a very symbolic repetition of bureaucratic evil.
Yes, that is exactly, Yes, that is exactly bureaucratic evil. And that is totalitarianism.
Yeah.
This is ethical or hermeneutical, in this case, hermeneutical violence, right? And you can see that bureaucratic evil generates violence, because at a critical point where a good question is in order, right? The question that you raised is a good question. Instead of giving an answer, you receive violence. Heidegger did this a lot in class. I hear from people who did his seminars. When he asked him certain questions which were interesting, for instance, Hans Friedrich Fulda, professor in Heidelberg, told me this story. He asked Heidegger in Gadamer's seminar once what the relationship was between physical time and existential time, being in time. Well, it's an obviously good question. And then, what's the relation? Because you don't deny that there is Uhrzeit, physical time. And Heidegger said, this is not Heidegger's question. He referred to himself in the third person, and all he said was, this is not Heidegger's question. So this is, you see, this is precisely the totalitarian way of thinking. Instead of admitting either that he doesn't have an answer or that he's trying answers, so instead of giving you an honest, rational answer, he blocks the chain of reasoning. And so that is the opposite of universalizing. There you can see, because in the scenario of what we call the compound at the beginning of our conversation, Heidegger would have responded to this in whatever way. He could also just say, I never figured that out. That's a great question. I don't know. He could say, I don't know. It's a good question. I don't know.
It's a good reply.
Fantastic reply.
Let's elaborate this question together. Right.
This is how it should work. So Heidegger should have encouraged that student to write a dissertation about that. He should have said, I don't know, didn't figure it out. Go read some Einstein, talk to the physicists, right? Come back and tell me what the relationship is between existential and physical time. Maybe I have to change my concept. Maybe I got it wrong. Maybe there's no existential time. Please figure it out for me. That's your job now. That's research. And I think this is philosophical research. This is how it should work. And this is very obvious. But most people don't do that. So most professors, the absolute majority of professors, are only interested in creating golems of themselves, right? They want to create something that is just like them but a machine. Yeah. For little Frankensteins. So this is their picture of the perfect disciple, right? Someone who's exactly like them. Yeah. And that is a terrible understanding of philosophy as science. Really, so-called scientific philosophy could exist, but it's just the obvious, it's just philosophy. Well, philosophy and scientific philosophy are the same thing, not because philosophy needs to be like the other sciences, but because philosophy can be done scientifically. Open-ended, truth-searching enterprise.
Since that experience in which my talk was prohibited by a professor, I had started to think of the meaning of institution or the university.
Yes, yeah, me too, basically.
Right?
This is when you start thinking about it.
Yeah. And after that, I got a job in Kyoto, Ritsumeikan University. Yeah, it's kind of a marginalized university in the middle of Kyoto. Kyoto University is a central figure there, but Ritsumeikan is a really private university and marginalized one. But it has a very unique, perspective to the institution or university. So the dean of department of literature at the time, I go to that department, asked me to write a blueprint of new university, right? So, at that time I was just 31 years old. Probably. Yeah, but I was in charge of a new university project.
That's great.
Right? So, then I wrote a blueprint of new university in which international students and Japanese students study together by using English and Japanese at the same time, right? And I'd like to open up really international, openness in this university, right? So now it works very well. It got a huge reputation from business world, right? Yeah, so it has a good connection within the Asia, right? The those who graduate from that university have a jobs in each country, right? So that's our strategy to change the mode of university, right? And after that, I also opened up a new graduate school at Ritsumeikan University, in which Chiba-san became a professor, right? Yeah, but he did not know the background of that, graduate course. Yeah, but it's okay. But I really think of to open up a new type of discourses in a graduate course, right? So in which we invited a professors of ethics, focusing on the weak normativity, weak ethics, right? Yeah, so maybe it's a totally new, idea at the time in the university.
Yeah.
So I came back to University of Tokyo. Yeah, I hated my university, right? But yeah, I accepted to be back to New Tokyo.
Yeah.
So I tried to change the mode of thinking of university in our university itself. So I with some colleagues, I opened up a new institution called UTCP, University of Tokyo Center for Philosophy.
Yes, which is pretty big, right?
Yeah. So I ran this institute how many years? Over 10 years. Yeah. Now it is still going on in a different, scheme, but it's okay. So at that time, we wanted to have international scholars to join us together to open up a new discourse of philosophy. It is, on the one hand, really theoretical, but on the other hand, it is really practical. The extreme of the theory has to meet with the extreme of the practical. That was our, basic idea at that time. And now, I succeeded to get a huge budget from a company, to, open up a new, philosophical space once again, right? But this is a really rare example in Japanese universities, right? Yeah, probably it's also rare in German universities.
Yes, I think so. I mean, the good thing in Germany now is that there's this funding scheme called the Excellence Strategy, and so the universities encourage people to really be like that. So this is in Bonn at least, but many universities do this. This is the excellent standard in Bonn. So this is what a rector, say the university administration, thinks of as excellent. Excellent research is completely cutting edge, futuristic kind of research that goes beyond what is known. And so such a structure, which you created in Germany would then be classified as here at Bonn, for instance, would turn into a university recognized center of excellence. Which it basically is, I guess, right, with the funding and the president help you to get the funding, etc. So similarly, this is recognized as merit for you as a professor within the university.
We called it COE as a center of excellence. Right? We got this COE money.
You got it.
For UTCP. For 10 years.
You already have.
But after the change of Japanese government to Democratic Party, they cut off.
They really.
COE program. So we were so much disappointed. That's Democratic Party. Stopped this COE project in Japan. But in Germany, in Korea,
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay, Korea is doing a
Yes.
big time. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and in China now, they, focus on this COE, Center of Excellence project
Yeah.
in the university, right? Yeah, while Japan stopped it.
And this is very bad, right? I mean, these projects are crucial for, so philosophers should also be interested, at least some of us, in creating institutions.
Yes.
For just that reason. Because otherwise we will not be heard, right? And so more people need doing this. The physicists, they are a huge mafia. So a worldwide mafia.
Yeah.
That's why they have so much money and all the foundations, etc. It's not because they're useful. On the contrary, they destroy and kill people.
Yeah.
Right? They are mass murderers. If you look at if you look at how many people died because of physics, that's a remarkable amount of people. Maybe all people, depending on the result of the ecological crisis, right? The worst thing which ever happened to humanity might be modern physics.
Yes.
So sometimes people worry about, religion. Well, religion killed people, but physics killed more people.
Yeah.
I mean, the modern scientific worldview very clearly killed more people than all religions together in the preceding thousands of years. Because modern wars are made possible, cars and tanks and warplanes, the internet. These are all science and products of modern science and technology. And now imagine how many people were killed.
Yeah.
Plastic, the invention of plastic, right? This is all science and technology. It's the most dangerous mode of, work producing surplus value that humanity has ever seen.
So philosophers are responsible to, enlighten physicists.
Yes,
Right?
absolutely. Yes, this is where we have to help them to see the light of reason.
Yeah.
And I think Japan is a very good place for this. In my experience so far, because you have these extremely good physicists, with this brutally high IQ. So people who, who are not naturally stupid, right? They just don't know the philosophy. So I think there was an older model in German universities, which was dropped, 20, 30 years ago, the so-called Philosophicum. Back in the days, that until a certain point, everyone in the university had to take philosophy classes, whatever discipline. So I think we should have that again. So imagine everyone who has a university degree, right, took at least 2 semesters, so 1 year of something hardcore philosophy. And by that I don't mean, ethics in the sense of utilitarian ethics versus Kantian ethics. No, real philosophy. So that these people understand, the physicists, that philosophy is a discipline. And not just talking about what we ought to do, right? So they have to see the strength of philosophy. That we're not stupid, because they often think that they have these high IQs, and that philosophers are just talking about, wisdom. That's a bad picture of philosophy.
They don't know the meaning of PhD.
No, they don't know. No, they have no idea.
Yeah. We are really, responsible to that. Yeah, you just described the utilitarian ethics and the Kantian one,
Yeah,
right? So in a very simple,
yeah,
schema
yeah.
is popular,
Very popular, yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And they asked me to, use a trolley problem,
Yeah, yeah.
right?
Yes, I know. They all want to do trolley problems,
Right.
because of that. Yeah. But this is already a misperception of philosophy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Here's the solution to the trolley problem. All options are bad. That's a trolley problem. You have to kill the baby or the 7 grandmas. They are all equally bad.
Right.
That's the solution.
Yeah.
Don't run the car.
Right.
If you have to start to destroy the trolley. Yeah. So if people talk about automated cars, right? Whom should we kill? Well, if we build automated cars and they will kill people, we should not have automated cars. That's the answer to your question.
Yes.
Right? So if you ask, I think any philosopher who really thinks about this would have to say, we cannot have automated driving. Then someone will say, but more people die in non-automated driving. And then I say, for one thing, I don't believe that. This is just statistics for a non-existent future, right? Often you get this argument in Germany that, we can reduce the amount of car crashes. Well, do you know that? Did you ever try it? How do you know that you will reduce the amount of car crashes? I don't even believe that. I think this is bullshit. They're not reducing them at all because the systems of their sensors are very bad, right? So if a leaf falls of a certain shape, the car will just stop on the highway, and then all the other cars will either crash in it or stop too quickly, so that people in the car will die, right? People have tried this. If you have, if it runs 120 kilometers, and then it sees this other car stopping, it has to stop, right? And it has to stop very quickly, then you would probably die in the car, right? Because it's too quick. So they have to solve so many issues, right? That I doubt they will ever solve them. So they promise us a future which is never coming as statistical evidence, right? So that the whole discourse is complete bullshit. I think that's the answer to the trolley problem.
Yes.
It's a pseudo problem.
Yeah. Like now I am asked to write textbook for high school students. And people ask me to refer to trolley problem. I refuse it.
Yes, absolutely. It's bad to spread the news, right? It's bad. But this is what people think about ethics, right?
But I am now trying to write a why this trolley problem is false problem.
That's a good question.
In the textbook.
That's much better. This is what because those kids are not stupid, right? So we make them stupid. If we tell them that there's a trolley problem, this is a stupid proposal. This is again not understanding the nature of philosophy as a science, right? Real philosophy is not a series of idiotic American thought experiments, right? A lot of that's the problem with a lot of analytic philosophy.
So how do you persuade American philosophers to join us?
Well, you can't. They have to change before we can talk to them again. About I don't think they. I think they did not make it into the 21st century. I think they dropped out of the race, like America generally, right? As I said yesterday at dinner,
Yeah.
America opted out of enlightenment.
Yes.
And I think American philosophy opted out of philosophy. They just stopped doing it. I mean, there are some good specialists for certain things, right? But in a certain sense, they're not playing the game anymore. So most of them, what they do is they are well-paid elite professors with very little duties, hardly any administration. They teach 1 or 2 seminars. They get very good salaries for that. Live in their university housing system, right? And meet their other 3 friends at the other elite universities. That's their life.
Yeah.
And all they're interested in is the production and reproduction of their economic niche.
Yes.
It's the mafia.
Yes.
That's the mafia.
Yeah.
And you know, remarkably, the American university system works mostly via, you know, peer review and letters of recommendation. And both are mafia systems.
Yes.
So I think America is mostly, many social systems have turned, not everything, of course, not an entirely corrupted country, but American philosophy is corrupted. I think it's a corrupt, literally economically corrupt system. That's my experience with it. Very often people with no publications get jobs, or bad publications if you read them. But they're, you know, 1 paper in the right journal, published by the friend of the supervisor of that person, who then hires that person as a job, on the job. This is usually how this works now. Pure corruption.
Yeah. Yeah, it is maybe fortunate, not unfortunate, for that Japanese young students do not want to go to America.
Yes, they don't, right?
To get a PhD.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, they can feel, oh, something wrong is happening in American university system. It's kind of ethically wrong.
Yes, it's ethical. Yes, that's what's wrong about it.
Right? But many, you know, students from China visit America to get the PhD.
Yes. Yeah.
So, like now for example, PKU, Tsinghua, such you know, famous universities are just like prep school for American universities, right?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, so you know, I met some PKU graduate students, and they said to me, yeah, you know, we are a kind of a prep school, right? So I go to the graduate course of PKU, but I have no future after graduating PKU, after getting PhD of PKU, right? The professorship is occupied by the American PhDs.
Yeah.
It's a really ironical situation.
Yes. What could be done with a little more strategy is, you know, they still hire people from Germany too. I know they prefer American PhDs, but German PhDs can get in. As a fantasy about the West, etc. You know, like so it would be more helpful to establish, you know, stronger ties actually to China. Because right now we can influence the development of Chinese philosophy. But this takes a lot of work, actually. and convincing, right? So the Chinese shouldn't. It's a paradox, right? That Chinese institutions succumb to the American dream.
Right.
So they buy this story and they try to be part of that corrupt system. Yeah. What they don't understand that is that this is absolutely not in their own interest.
Yeah, all right. So
Good. Yeah. I
Good.
think we have
yeah,
quite a bit of material.
yeah. So do you have any extra idea for us to talk?
Let me talk to him in Japanese.
Yes, of course. Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead.
ディナーの席で、明日話してくださいって言ったのって何でしたっけ？
まあサークルも福島の頃です
福島
かね。
の問題。
まあちょっと福島話しました。
ハイデガーのブラックノートの話も返してもらいます。あれは言えない話なのか。
あれはでも昨日で多分済んでると思います。
ディナーテーブルでなんか隠された一冊があるとか、あれはでも言えないのかな。
So, how about the Heidegger's Black Note?
Yeah. Black Notebooks.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. The long story about that. If you like, I can talk a little bit about that. Yeah. So that is very complicated in detail. So I've read all of them so far. Like this year, there's another one has been published. So it's very complicated if you really look at what's going on. But fundamentally, the Black Notebooks, the shortest summary is this. About what people worry about. So there are different things, right? There are hundreds of pages, and he spends most of them elaborating on being, etc. So most of this reads like a very obscure version of late Heidegger. Late Heidegger is obscure in its own right, but this is very obscure late Heidegger. And so you have hundreds of pages of obscure thinking. But in these hundreds of pages, you have political reflections which show us that Heidegger was, and here Habermas was right, an ordinary Nazi. Do I have my volume? We did publish this. Which is kind of even at least equally interesting, if not more interesting than the Black Notebooks. I have that really only at home. I need another copy of that. So Heidegger's letters with his brother from 1930 to 1934 have also recently been published. And there we can see how Heidegger began to vote National Socialist. So when he became a Nazi. And it is for just the ordinary political reasons. Okay, so there's nothing behind it apart. He's a real Nazi, through and through. And what is shocking about the Black Notebooks, even deep into the late 40s, like after war Black Notebooks, is that Heidegger clearly believes a version of the story that the Jews, the Jewish spirit, or something like that. He has various words for this. One could have to look at that. This is a summary, right? Fundamentally, Judaism is the intellectual and historical origin of detachment, technological detachment. He thinks the Jews disenchanted the world. Now he gets that, which is remarkable, from Max Weber. Weber was professor of sociology in Freiburg at some point before he moved to Heidelberg. I don't know which other stations. I think Weber was Freiburg, Munich, Heidegger or something like that, but be that as it may, he knows Max Weber and Simmel and so forth. So he has read the sociology of the Weimar Republic, and Weber makes this claim. The disenchantment of nature claim in Weber is that claim. Weber thinks the Jewish prophets have disenchanted nature by saying, God is not in nature, God is transcendent. So they invented the idea of nature as godless system. So if you first have God in nature, like in animism or Greek pantheism, etc., and then you take God out, then you have godless nature. And godless nature is the detached object of control, right? As God says in the Bible, right? I give you humans nature to profit from it, right? You name the animals and then you do whatever to nature. You work on nature, right? That's in the Bible. And so Weber takes this in order to make a version of the claim that the Jews invented technology and modernity, rationalism. But he is not against it at all. It's descriptive in Weber. Weber doesn't turn this into a specific point. Now, Heidegger enters the scene. He accepts this kind of story suddenly, right? Which is not very prominent in his published work before. This is often associated with Descartes, it's the Cartesian mathematical understanding of nature. But suddenly in the Black Notebooks, the Cartesian is replaced by the Jew. So that's surprising. And you know why? Because the Cartesian in Being and Time has always been a placeholder for Husserl. He calls Husserl a Jew in the Black Notebooks. So the whole critique of Cartesianism in official Heidegger is a critique of Husserl, Cartesian meditations. So Descartes and the Jew are interchangeable for Heidegger, because Husserl is the Jew. And he even speaks of Husserl's circumcised Dasein. Husserl's beschnittenes Dasein. So people have misinterpreted this. He means literally circumcised. So he's referring to Husserl's Judaism. And that's a big topic in the Black Notebook. Only a couple of passages, but it's remarkable. So you see what Heidegger has been up to, right? Famously, he dedicates Being in Time to Husserl, and as soon as he is the Nazi rector of Freiburg, he takes out the dedication. And if you look at all of this, things get really scary. So he thinks really he's attacking Husserl because he's a Jew. Heidegger is a brutal anti-Semite. That's what I'm saying. He's not a hobby anti-Semite. He's a true believer in anti-Semitism. And Heidegger does not say we should kill the Jews, right? That's not there. What he says is that the Jews created the possibility for concentration camps. That's there. And so the fact that they're in concentration camps now is largely, if not exclusively, largely due to they did it to themselves. He even has a story how National Socialism is Jewish. So there are passages like that where he suggests, he wonders, whether even genocide, might be basically a Jewish plot against the Jews. So and he does refer to concentration camps in, I think, 1947. I need to check this, but at least it's clearly after the war, where he talks about concentration camps and says it's the killing of the many whom nobody wanted to know. Das Hinmorden der vielen, die keiner kennen wollte. So that's what he calls a concentration camp. He says, they don't matter. No one wanted to know them. And he famously says, I found a passage, he says in published, like, he draws this famous distinction between stones, animals and humans.
Yeah.
Stones are worldless, animals are poor in world, and humans are world-creating animals. Weltbild, world-forming. That's a famous distinction between inanimate nature, animals, and humans. And he calls the Jews in the Black Notebooks worldless. Not poor in world, not world-forming. They are stones. They are not even insects in Heidegger. They are material. Material nature, they are part of material nature, worldless. He speaks of, I quote, die Weltlosigkeit des Judentums, the worldlessness of Judaism. That's a quote. Weltlos. And we know weltlos is stones. So they are stones. That's what's going on. The worldlessness of Judaism. And all of this is in the Black Notebooks. So I think that in reality the Black Notebooks are worse than they have been portrayed by the media. So the media were all shocked, everyone was shocked, but I think it's way worse than everyone believes it is. Heidegger is a full-blown Nazi ideologue. And then there's this other document, I don't know, to which extent this is accurate. So someone discovered a paper recently, someone in Heidelberg, a critic, she's working on National Socialism and philosophy. And she discovered this one sheet of paper, let me show this to you. So Heidegger was part of a thing called Ausschuss für Rechtsphilosophie, Committee for Philosophy of Law, which was a Nazi. Carl Schmitt was in there too, and so was Erich Rothacker, Habermas's supervisor again, and some other Nazi thinkers. And they always claimed after the war that they stopped meeting in the 80s. So this whole thing is really scary because they did recently find this document. Abbildungsverzeichnis. Do they have it? Yeah. I think it is. So recently, very recently, a couple of months ago, someone discovered this, there it is, paperwork, where is it? You have to see this document. It's truly scary, an Ausschuss mit Carl Schmitt. It's very recent. So Heidegger was, we knew that, part of this group. Ausschuss. Photos. Oh yeah, that's the famous document. Yes, so this was recently discovered. And so this is a list of the members of this committee. And this guy, Reichsminister Frank, he was responsible for a lot of the genocides in Czechoslovakia, etc. Okay? So a minister of the Nazis, he was heading this, right? And then look at the members. Heidegger, Rosenberg, Rothacker, Bonn, Karl Schmidt, and some other people. These are the members. Look, University of Freiburg. And this document, and they claimed after the war, they were all asked, what did you do in this committee? And they said, because the Allies thought that they had prepared Auschwitz. They said we couldn't because we stopped meeting in 1938. And remarkably, all documents from this committee were destroyed in a ministry where all the other documents are preserved. After the war, the Allies went in, only those documents apparently were destroyed. But they said, oh, that's because we stopped meeting in 1938. We didn't destroy anything. There weren't any documents. We stopped meeting. We had nothing to do with anything. We did meet twice. I think they all admitted they met twice or something. But you see Heidegger and Rosenberg in the same room. Now, this document is dated 1941.
Wow.
And she found it in the library in Berlin, hidden between some sheets. And look, it's crossed out. Yes, we don't know who did that. But there is, this evidence, right? So we don't know what this means, but this document was found in 1941. She claims that they did meet. So she claims that they did prepare the Holocaust. But there was a debate about this because, what does this prove? And then some historians debated this, etc. And there was an earlier, people knew that Heidegger was in this committee because Victor Farias had brought this to light earlier. So Heidegger's membership was well known, but not what the committee did and how often they met, etc. So, and in 1941, minimally, either they did meet or someone took out the document and checked what they could do with them, asked them, whatever. So we don't know what it means. But my suspicion generally is, like Sidonie Kellerer in Cologne, she was at Bonn. Before that, she worked on similar things. So what she had discovered is also remarkable. Heidegger's famous text, Zeit des Weltbildes, Age of the World Picture, it's a famous text, which Heidegger after the war used in order to claim that he was the kind of resistance fighter. Because in the published version, he criticizes the Nazis. And he gave this talk, I think in 1937 or something, as a talk. And after the war, he published the text and said, look, I criticized them. How can I be a Nazi? She found the original manuscript. And she found out that Heidegger gave it to Nazis, the original talk. And in the original, he tells them to go to war. And in the published version after the war, he changed the text. And she discovered that. So it's probably, we don't know, right? I mean, this is, I'm giving you a sketch, already interpreting some of that, right? But my own, conclusion is that Heidegger was much deeper into all of it, much deeper than people would have suspected. if you ask me, if I were like a judge trying to figure out the case, my suspicion at this stage, I would have to look for proofs, if I were the judge. But my suspicion would be that he knew about concentration camps very early, and that he had no objection whatsoever against the existence of concentration camps, to say the least. So I think this is the outcome of the Black Notebooks. Heidegger was a real Nazi, not an idiot who had fantasies about it.
Is it okay to include a story that you got a phone call from the son of the Heidegger one day?
Oh yeah, it's fine. You can, I went there, I talked to them. We didn't talk specifically about that, right? But he knows more. So here's something he told me, and I think he said that in print. So I think it's okay that I report this. So what I did hear from Heidegger's son is the following story. He told this to me orally. I don't know how accurate it is, right? I'm just reporting this. But he told me that Hitler once came to Freiburg, and Heidegger did not want to go. But he sent his son and his wife to go see Hitler. Heidegger did not want to go. That's what he said. But that night, he also told me that at the night of the Machtergreifung, so when the Nazis took over in March 1933, that night, he was 12, I think, his mother came into his room and told him that Martin Heidegger is not his biological father, which he isn't. Yeah. Heidegger had various sons, and he had children with other women, but his wife also had one child with another person. And that's Hermann Heidegger. And she told him never to tell Martin Heidegger. On the night of the Machtergreifung. So apparently, but here's another scary one, which I can tell you. So the family made me aware of this, but they claimed that's not true. But they told me this. So I looked into this, and I wasn't able to verify it with all historians. But Michael Brumlik, a famous historian also of National Socialism, etc., from the University of Frankfurt, also confirmed this on radio. So here's something which is more than a legend, probably true. Okay, but remarkable is the following. On the night, the so-called Reichskristallnacht, which was, in November, the biggest pogrom, etc., right? When basically the first major visible violent act against the Jews in Germany, on that night, when they were starting and burning the synagogue in Freiburg, Heidegger apparently lectured on fire in Heraclitus in the lecture hall from which you can see the synagogue. So I was in the lecture hall, that's what I did. I looked out of the window and you could see where the synagogue was. So there is a lecture hall from which, and Heidegger apparently lectured about fire in Heraclitus while the synagogue was burning. And now things get really bad. Right? Blitzkrieg is a famous word that Nazis love, right? And over the hut is written the Heraclitus saying on Heidegger's hut, Blitz governs everything. Okeanos, Blitz. Panta Keraine is on the hut. And Heidegger talks a lot about fire and Heraclitus, in this Nietzsche lectures, etc. So I think that Heidegger is thinking about the Holocaust. And I don't know how much he knew, to which extent he might have really been part of the preparation of something. What some people suspect, this might just be an conspiracy theory. I don't know how deep it goes. This is historically very complicated, but there are bad things. Let me give you another one, which I discovered. So this made me almost vomit, because I was in Freiburg at the time when these black notebooks came out. So late Heidegger, in the contributions to philosophy, instead of talking about mysticism, right, invents the following term: Siegetik. From Greek sigaro, to shut your mouth, not to speak. Okay, Siegetik, not to speak. So he says what he's doing in the contributions, in the Seinsdenken, is Siegetik, not mysticism, right? Siegetics. Now that looks awfully, innocent. But here's how you can also read Siegetik. Sieg, Ethik. Sieg, Heil. Sieg, Ethik. Sieg, victory, Nazi victory. Die Sieg-Ethik. That's what he's doing. It's code. And the Nazis, after the war and during the war, used code. And I think truth and Heidegger, aletheia, revealing, concealing, is a code for Nazi code. Truth, what he says about truth is exactly this. There's a difference between what you reveal and what you conceal. And truth is the difference between the revealed and the concealed. Unconcealedness. And I think unconcealedness is a Nazi code. Heidegger is writing in code for a community. Let me give you hardcore evidence for this. This is bad, but let me give you the hardest evidence I could have. Right? Heidegger's famous text, Das Ding. Right?
Yeah.
In this text, he makes a lot of fuss about the etymology of Ding, right? German etymology, which is thing in English, right? Ding in German is thing in English, right? And thing derives from a medieval practice of trials. A thing, like Latin causa, right, is a trial, a medieval trial. Now let me show you a place called the Thing Place, Tingstätte, where they did practice these trials. It's this place close to Heidelberg. This place, that's the Tingstätte. Tingstätte. In Heidelberg, look this up. Okay. Thing place.
Yeah.
And you know who put this there in Heidelberg? Goebbels. And you know what they did on Reichskristallnacht in Heidelberg? They went up there and killed some Jews. Now, Heidegger talks about this thing. And this is das Ding. I can show you das Ding. This is das Ding. It's not Lao Tse's cup. That is the opening. That's the clearing. It's in a clearing in a forest. This is Lichtung. Die Lichtung is on a hill in Heidelberg. This is how bad this whole thing is, in my view, if you ask me. I think late Heidegger is Nazi code. That's what's going on. And Manfred Frank told me the following story. I've heard this from several people. So Heidegger was invited, in the 60s to Heidelberg. Gadamer brought him in regularly. And then he gave a talk in Heidelberg, and the communist students were there revolting, protesting against Heidegger's presence, the Nazi philosopher, And Heidegger entered the room, and there was the protest, and everyone thought that the situation would explode. Heidegger enters the room, and he does this. They all sit down, the communist students sit down and listen. And then Heidegger apparently said, Direktoratsrede, so his famous, Nazi talk when he became director, was a mistake. And everyone was like, wow, Heidegger is admitting his guilt. And then the second, so here's what he said. The Rektorat's talk was a mistake. Everyone surprised. But not a political mistake. That's what he said. Die Rektoratsrede war ein Irrtum, aber kein politischer. So, what he is saying is this. I should never have said in public what I really planned. It was a mistake to say this in public. It was a strategic mistake. But of course, National Socialism is the right government. That's what he said. And they didn't get it. That he told them in the face, using code, that he's still a Nazi. And they didn't know what to do with it, and they all listened to his talk. They just sat there and listened. That's the magic of it. And this kind of magic you would still find in Heideggerians all over the world. Japanese Heideggerians, German Heideggerians, French Heideggerians, American Heideggerians, Chinese Heideggerians, right?
In my graduate days, I was told that Heidegger was much more than Nazi than Nazi people.
Yes, that's the right thing to say. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, Heidegger was a real ideologue of the Third Reich. He was not a minister, all right. But he was a true believer.
I forgot the exact date in which Levinas translated Husserl's Cartesian meditation into French. Right? Maybe. It is a starting point of post-war French, philosophy. Sartre was really,
absolutely
excited at reading that translation, right? But after listening to your talk, so it tells us a lot, right? So Levinas intentionally, translated Cartesian meditation, Husserl, into French.
Oh yeah, Levinas was completely aware of all of that.
Yeah.
And so was Adorno. Adorno talks about that in this text which just came out. How he returned to Frankfurt and how he could see that everyone would like to kill him, but they couldn't do it anymore. So that is part of why he wrote in an obscure language, Adorno. He couldn't speak to them. He couldn't tell them what he had to say because they were the murderers. So imagine, you're a Jewish critical intellectual, right, returning to your home country, right, to your home from the United States where they had just murdered 6 million people because they have this kind of religion, right, with which you are associated. So you could have been murdered by those people, right? And now you lecture in front of those people. They weren't killed, right? They were there, right? Some of them, only the big ones, of course, went to trial. And Adorno, of course, helped people to find other people, they had to find Eichmann and all of that. I mean, these are the big stories of the 50s and 60s in Germany. And Heidegger is present in that post-war Germany, and he is helping the Nazis to stay in their power positions. That's what he's doing in the background. That's what he has been doing until the end of his life. And I happen to think that, the year in which the Alternative for Germany, the new right-wing party, was founded, is the year of the publication of the Black Notebooks. And I do not think that this is a coincidence, if you ask me. And one of the members of parliament, AfD members of parliament, is Mark Jongen, the student of Sloterdijk's, who worked on Heidegger, and he is the ideologue of this party. That's why people think that Sloterdijk is right-wing because of his student, right? I don't see that. I don't know the details of the story, but Jongen was recently invited to New York to the Hannah Arendt Center. The Hannah Arendt Center invited Mark Jongen, and he gave a talk about how there really are cultural differences, etc., and he defended German nationalism at the Hannah Arendt Center in New York, right? I mean, look at this talk, it's scary, right? If you want to see Heideggerianism, contemporary Heideggerianism, real Heideggerianism in action, you have to just see on YouTube Mark Jongen Hannah Arendt Center. You see the talk and the conversations and the kind of shitstorm that this triggered, right? And yeah, but this is Siegetik.
That's really shocking.
That is the game that Heidegger was playing. And I only scratched the surface because I never believed it before. I was trained in Heidegger, etc. I had the full training in reading Heidegger, so I couldn't believe that part. This is maybe why my view now is very extreme, right? But I have to say that my more extreme view, according to which he's really a brutal Nazi, is, I think the evidence confirms this.
Yeah. This is just anecdote.
Yeah.
I have been doing Chinese philosophy, but my first published article was for Levinas and Hannah Arendt. Right? I try to, analyze their, conceptions to, deconstruct Heideggerian concept. Right? Two of them use very similar, terminologies, but in a different way.
Yeah.
In political way and in an ethical way. But two of them share a very similar terminology,
Yeah.
which were really influenced by Heidegger,
Yeah.
but they are very conscious of using this terminology to criticize Heidegger.
Yeah.
So I feel, oh, this is philosophy,
Yeah.
right? Criticizing the such a power structure of ideology,
Yeah.
right? Constructed by Heidegger.
Yes.
So I was so enhanced
Yeah.
by Hannah Arendt and Levinas to think philosophically at that time.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is a crucial moment, and I think that's why in Japan I said last time, as loud as I could at Keio University at the Hegel conference there, right? Stop reading Heidegger,
You did?
Oh yeah, I said that.
Ah.
I wanted to wake people up, right? To make them. I know that Heidegger is still very prominent in Japan.
Yeah.
And for the next step in the Germany-Japan relations, let's get the Bonn Tokyo School into the picture, right? We need to move beyond the paradigm of an association of the Black Forest and Zen Buddhism, right?
Yeah.
I mean, so I think we have to move beyond that. The Heidegger Buddhism constellation is totalitarian.
Yes.
It's a totalitarian soft porn.
Actually, the word Kyoto School
Yeah.
was invented by a Tosaka Jun. Yeah. He was a disciple of Nishida Kitaro, but he criticized Nishida harshly, right? So, Kyoto School was a pejorative term for Tosaka, right? But afterwards, the Kyoto people use it as a very, good one.
Yeah, it turned into an object of Orientalist
Yeah.
appreciation.
Yeah.
It's
great
literature work that
Yeah.
first pass, and
Yeah.
I think you rejected, right?
Yeah.
So Tosaka, his first article was the analysis of a space and time in Kant, right? And he was a Marxist
Yeah.
at the time, right? But he's a really brilliant scholar, but he was expelled
Yeah.
from Kyoto
Yeah.
to Tokyo,
Ah.
right? Yeah, so I had a chance to read Tosaka's books and articles. Oh, we had such a brilliant, critical mind, even in that dark time,
Yeah.
right? So that's why I decided to open up a new discourse of Tokyo School,
Yeah.
including Tosaka, such
Yeah.
an exile
Yeah.
from Kyoto School, right? Yeah, Tokyo has also a very dark
Yeah. Of course.
story,
Yeah.
premium dark story,
No doubt.
no doubt.
Yeah.
Yeah, so but I think it's time,
Yeah.
to open up a new philosophical realm,
Yeah.
which is completely different from such a dark history of Tokyo
Yeah.
or Kyoto School, Heidegger, Zen Buddhist.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, it's easy to move beyond that now, right? We literally just have to leave this behind because now we are aware of this, right?
Yeah.
So this is explicit. We can, as it were, draw a circle around it and reject it.
Yeah.
Not forget it. It's important not to throw this into a garbage bin and then begin to hide it, right? We know it. We need to repeat the memory, right? That's clear, right? We must not forget. But that does not mean that we cannot reject. Right? We can't say no to this. Of course we can. Right?
This might be a very basic question. How Kyoto School made an influence on Japanese imperialism? Basic question about that.
Oh, very much. I think.
Yeah.
You know, in the latest Nishida's article, he advocated the notion of the way of imperial way. It is our principle to govern this world, right? And it is profoundly supported by his philosophy.
Yeah.
Right? No doubt. Yeah, people, they are trying to save Nishida, like Heidegger, from such political understanding. No, it's impossible. He is really smart philosopher to support Japanese totalitarianism. No doubt.
And can I ask, もう一つガブリエル先生に質問なんですけど、可能性の悪とハイデガーっていうのは悪っていうのはどういうふうに何かつながりがあるのかっていうのと、官僚性の悪と西田の悪っていうのは何かつながりがありますかっていうのを。
Yeah, so how do you think of the relationship between bureaucratic evil and Heidegger's evil?
Yeah. So Heidegger is pure bureaucratic evil. He invents a language for this, as it were, right? That's why. So the system. I mean, he was the rector of the University of Freiburg under the Nazis. And he thought about how to organize. He created institutions, right? So he thought about how to organize institutions so that they are subject to what he calls Führerprinzip, the principle of the Führer. So how can we have a really Nazi university? And he organized student camps and training camps while he was director, etc. And attended them later, right? He was never stopped his engagement in the party. He was also a member of the party until the end of the war. So he was like playing that role. So he was literally turning the institution into institutions of this kind of bureaucratic evil.
What about the case of the Nishida?
You know, Imperial University of Tokyo was a center of bureaucratic evil, right? So, but this is a very funny story. You know, almost the end of a war. You know, Japanese people wanted to protect Japanese a national entity, but nobody knew what it is, right? But Nishida could give the content of this national entity through his philosophical, works, right? So we can find such a kind of complement between the Imperial University of Tokyo and Kyoto School, right? That's my observation.
And China, is there any relationship of even of bureaucracy? I mean, the current China system. And also, you mentioned that your symposium was cancelled. About the symposium about Shintenka was cancelled.
Yeah.
何かつなげてお話しできることありますか?
So, do you have any idea of it?
Well, China is super complicated. So I think China has very many levels because it's such a complicated social system. But I think there's at least one level which operates like North Korea, right? I think there are various levels, which is why individuals can achieve a lot of freedom. So it's unstable, it's not tightly organized in a really North Korean way. It's Chinese that is chaotic, China has always run on chaos. That's the principle, right? So it has lots of, in the technical sense, degrees of freedom. But I think there is a North Korea element too, right? A totalitarian organization, right? Of course. And in China, I think this is particularly related to, modes of surveillance. That's my impression. But it's probably also deep in the university system. I did hear stories about a lot of violence. I was at a dinner at one university once in Beijing where someone lost his job because he was gay. And they didn't know that I understood enough Chinese to see what they were doing. So they thought that they were just smiling at each other, right, and talking to each other, but they didn't know I understood that. And so they insulted him as a pig all the time. And made fun of his food and forced him to eat things that he didn't want to eat, etc. So he completely lost face in that situation, and he had to go. And basically, he was publicly fired and shamed. But I understood it. But it looked like they were just talking to each other, and then he said, "Bye, I have to go now." And then I never saw him again. And I asked them next day, "Oh, where's this colleague, etc." They said, "Oh no, he can't be here today, etc." So I think there are brutal executions of careers, etc. Or a colleague of mine downstairs, he was slightly tortured in China. He was a professor at Beida. What happened to him? Not by someone at the university. What happened to him is, he was driving in China and he had forgotten to renew his visa. He was a professor there, and in order to, he just forgot to renew it. You have to renew it every so and so many months, right? No problem for a foreign professor at Beida. He forgot to do it. Then the police caught him driving, right? They asked him for this permit, which he forgot to renew, and then he had to go to the police station with them. And he sat in a room for 6 hours with always changing people smoking. What he didn't realize, he was himself a heavy smoker, right? And he was just sitting there and wondered. And then afterwards, he realized that this was torture. But it wasn't torture for him, because he thought he was just waiting for someone, right? And he's a heavy smoker. So he was just in a room with, but he was wondering, always another person came in, smoked cigarettes, then another person came in, smoked cigarettes, and then after hours, he was like, when can I talk to someone? And they didn't even answer him. And he thought they always were looking for someone who speaks English, but they could never find one. So he didn't even understand that he was tortured. But I think he was tortured. In a room with smoking people, always another person comes and smokes many cigarettes until he could hardly breathe in the room and no one talks to him. And then at the end someone came in and said, "You're free to go," and they, because they had apparently called someone at Beida to confirm his story. So I think this is what happens a lot in China, torture, but very subtle torture. Like not so that in a certain sense you might say they didn't torture me, they just smoked in the room, right? But if you look at all of this, you're like, damn, that's torture. And I think this is how the Chinese do it a lot. And everyone knows that this is a possibility. So everyone knows that you can really go down in life and that is dangerous. So they react to this constant threat. This is my impression. That there's a very invisible threat that you might lose everything. That's my impression.
I have the similar impression. China is the oldest country of bureaucracy.
Yes, exactly.
Right?
In the world.
Right? Maybe, German bureaucracy or Japanese bureaucracy are very, childish. And
Very late. I mean, we have a couple of hundreds of years. They have thousands.
So maybe their bureaucratic system goes beyond our imaginary.
Yes, I think that's it. Yes. I think we cannot even, you have to be really like a very good sinologist and spend 20 years there in order to begin to understand what every Chinese person knows. It's an intimate knowledge, right? I mean, to know what this means, you have to be in it. This cannot be observed from the outside. So this social reality is inaccessible to outsiders, I think. And it's incredibly complicated. I mean, Japanese society is very complicated for outsiders, right? And for insiders, but China is much more complicated.
So that's why, the younger generation educated in, say, Europe and America, have some difficulty with a Chinese, inner law.
Yes.
They cannot understand.
No, they cannot understand it. They are foreigners in their own country.
Right.
It's alien to them too, I think so.
Right.
It's very alien.
So sometimes my Chinese Greek refers to, weather forecast.
They're off.
Right? So in TV, we always see the weather forecast. Tomorrow, it will be fine, or it will be raining. But this, weather forecast is applied to society. That is part of their imagination. Right? So, forecast of society is really important to them.
I think I've heard that too. One of do you know Wolfgang Kubin? Maybe Kubin. He was at Bonn too. He's in China now, and he edited a lot of the Chinese classical philosophical texts recently, and so he also told me that metaphor. He said this forecast metaphor, and he also said in China you never know what tomorrow's yesterday will be like.
Yeah.
So they change.
Yeah.
So it's very unstable. The
Very
experience.
unstable.
And very chaotic, and the Chinese are extremely passionate, right? I mean, what I was always surprised to find, it's like the psychological, on the psychological level, it's extremely hot.
Yes.
Right? People are incredibly passionate and dynamic. And this, and so it requires a lot of self-control and structure and discipline, right? And so this hangs together, right? This bureaucratic system and the level of passion that it creates in the individuals, etc. It's a really explosive dynamic. And it's the biggest social dynamic on planet Earth because of the economy, right? India too, but China is much bigger, because of its bureaucracy and its continuity. China has had this continuity with a very short break of 100 years of colonialism, which was a deep shock. India has always been colonized by everyone, right? India has not been independent for thousands of years, right? I mean, ancient India also consisted of many little empires. China has been unified, for thousands of years, after the five kingdoms, etc., and it turned into, as it were, one structure with its local diversity. Right? But the idea that it's one is an old idea now.
So how do you think philosophy can play some role in China?
Well, I mean, if we bring philosophical institutions, new enlightenment into that system, right, the Chinese can do something with it. We don't know what it will look like. My hope is that we can use China's strength in order to solve humanity's problem. I mean, officially, the goal of the Democratic, the Communist Party is the emancipation of all of humanity. And that's officially their goal. So if we can convince them, with the help of philosophy and philosophical institutions, to reach this goal not by dominating the rest of the world, that's something they should understand, that it's not a good idea. It's in the political tradition not to wage war randomly, because it cannot be controlled. And for them it's important to control situations, not like America, just go into Iraq. They won't do that, right? They want to have control over their activities. And that's my impression. That's why they don't just take over Taiwan, right? That you couldn't control this. This is not how they operate. So if we can convince them that the control mechanisms are run by ethical software, that it's in their own economic interest and domination interest, then China can be a good power.
I think so.
That's perfectly possible. The Chinese are very smart. So if they realize that they make a lot of money and become very powerful if they clean up the air on planet Earth, they will just do it. But they haven't thought of it. Currently, they don't care enough. So if they assume this kind of ethical responsibility, ethical leadership, this will be the moment when they take over the United States. China can be the model for planet Earth, like America was for a while, by becoming ethical. Then they will. I don't know if this is desirable, right? this might also be a nightmare.
Could be.
Yeah, could be, but I think this is the next step for new enlightenment. China has to do it. America cannot do it. The European Union will not do it. It could in principle, but it would be too big a project. Because if the EU wanted to do it, it would have to fight a war against the United States. Like China is. China is in war with the United States, economic and otherwise, but they're clearly in some kind of war situation.
Yeah.
And the European Union is trying to avoid this because we still need to sell our stuff to them, etc. So the EU, in order to be powerful, needs the United States in a way in which China doesn't need them. So that's why China is the only place right now who can, make a moral leap. They're not doing this. I'm saying they can do this.
So my last question is the title of our book.
Yes, that's a good one. Yeah. Do you have an idea?
But new enlightenment?
Yeah, why not?
Yeah.
New enlightenment. Yeah, that doesn't exist yet. New enlightenment. Do you like that? That's a good idea.
Yeah.
New enlightenment and totalitarianism, something.
Okay, how about the end of totalitarianism, towards a new enlightenment.
Oh, great.
Yeah, the end. I think that's a good title. The end of totalitarianism towards a new enlightenment. I think that's
Perfect.
and then you can, as a subtitle somewhere, you say a conversation between a German and the Japanese cosmopolitan philosopher.
Good.
Conversation between a German and a Japanese cosmopolitan philosopher. Otherwise, it looks too much Germany, Japan, right? Even though it is that, but we want to go beyond the national stereotypes. That would be, I think, a funny subtitle which you find on the second page.
Yeah. Good. So,
Thank you very much. Yes.
yeah, wonderful.
I really appreciate such a wonderful conversation. It's my honor to be here.
Yeah, this was fantastic. I think we covered a lot of, very important ground.
Yeah.
So we're gonna go to lunch together?
I do have to attend a phone meeting, unfortunately,
Sure.
one, which just came in.
Okay, anyway, I need to talk to you like
paperwork.
Yeah.
Anytime is fine. I'm gonna stay here one more night. So
Yeah?
could you
Okay, so we could, of course, could we meet about this? So let me just see when this phone conversation will come in.
and then might be able to say hello to you secretly because I have to maybe, email to check if the documents are going. So.
Yes. We can do that now. Yeah, I still have 30 minutes before I get this phone call. Yeah.
And then I asked Kohei to send an email.
Yeah.
It's about our proposal to our favor to ask you to deliver a speech or symposium in
Yes.
Tokyo.
Oh, yeah. I just saw that. Yeah, I'm fine. We could do that absolutely in September.
Oh, good.
Yeah. So we can begin planning my visit because I will definitely come in September and do not know if I will come in March. It depends on Buenos Aires. I just ask them for a little more money, and if they cannot afford that, I will come to Japan. I mean, they pay me a good salary, but we didn't talk about flights, and I'm not willing to pay my own flights. So I just ask them, and depending on if they can afford my flights, I will go. Otherwise, I will come to Japan. But I will definitely be in Japan in September. So let me go to my calendar. Okay, here, so we will definitely be there, but I could add a couple of days, okay? September, my schedule says, let me go to the bigger screen, and then that's okay. And then we can begin to fix the date. And the book can come out maybe in September, right? And then we can organize a book launch too. And I will give a talk about just, those topics. So, here's what my schedule says. So, I have 100% certain that I will be in Japan from September 7 to 20 next year. Yeah, 7 to 20. Yeah. And nothing is booked yet. So I know that I have certain things to do. I know, because university is, giving us money to go with the whole team. So I know that I can add 5 people. Yeah. So, and I know we will have a conference in Barcelona at some point and in Kyoto, and we want to spend the weekend on Mount Fuji. So, because we never went. So that's certain. So, but there's no date yet. So, if you could pick a date when you're in Tokyo in this period, just give me a preferred date, which will also work for you. And then we do.
Maybe I can bring over you.
Yeah.
Messina.
Yeah.
It's somewhere close to Fuji.
Yeah. Yes.
The usually room
Yeah.
for us.
Yes, let's do that. I would love to do that. We haven't planned this yet, so.
That's a great key.
Yeah, absolutely, yes. That would be fantastic. So if you're free on this weekend, so we will plan, Friday to Sunday, and then probably we go to Kyoto because it's close from there. Let's see. And then we just go down to Kyoto, right? And for the book launch and the talk for 20 years, Schweizer paper, you could just pick a date. Yeah, and you tell me what works. Then I definitely spend the first week in Tokyo.
Good.
Yeah, and from there we go to, that's a wonderful idea. Yeah. This is exactly where we want to go. Yeah.
So, my kids go.
Yes, perfect. Oh yeah, let's do exactly that. And Alex Englander will join me. He is a new assistant professor here from Cambridge. Brilliant table stuff. But also, he now works on self-knowledge and action, on the relationship between self-consciousness and action. And that's a new project. And Jan Forsyth's philosophy of science. He works on new realism and new interpretation of physics. That's why he's also joining me. He's a physical and philosopher. very brilliant young people. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, but yeah. Yes, that would be great. Yeah, then we can have a very extended conversation. Yeah, yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah, then we need to begin to take care of it. Yeah. Yeah. Well, let me see if I can get my assistant so that they then you see them and you can let me get one of them. Yeah. Yes. Yes, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I can just put that in touch with my assistant, and then they can begin organizing those products together. You see the chair out for lunch. And I could add a couple of days. I mean, you could fly in a little bit earlier. Ja, also, das ist ein Tag, das ist das Rückverkommen. Ja, auch mit alles verlaufen, das denke ich nicht an, weil es aber egal ist. Ja, okay, dann komm mal kurz runter, wegen Japan. Ja, bis gleich, ciao. Yeah. Oh, I didn't know. So you also have a break. Yes. Yeah. In summer. Good. Ah, good. Yeah. But it's important to begin to observe and tell him that he has to book the flight at the hotel. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's already expensive. It doesn't matter the university is paying for it. Hello. Hello. It's nice there. Hello. We started planning in Japan, including the trip to Mount Fuji. And okay, Professor Japan's most interesting and distinguished philosopher, I might say. Yeah, Holz, Alexander. We recorded a wonderful book, which you should learn Japanese just to read our book. Otherwise, you can also get Yuka Athlete's MP3 in English, and then you can listen to 20 hours. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.